Hey guys, my guest tonight, Linda Lou Long, is going to be talking about the Tuskegee Strangler. See you in about 5 minutes. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust. Turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Good evening, everybody. How's everyone doing? Happy Wednesday. Last night, you guys got to watch a Best of California Haunts Radio. It's kind of cool to have those, you know. My name is Charlotte. I'm going to be your host for the next hour. I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team, based out of Sacramento, California. We are 45 strong up and down the state, which means if you have a paranormal problem or you think you have a paranormal problem, we can get to you, but it's going to take us a couple days. Okay? It might, I'm not going to. And depending on where you're at, it might take us a couple days. You know, when people think of California, they think of us like Hawaii, right? Oceans, beaches, that whole thing. Tan bodies and bikinis and clothes. Well, it is like that on the coast. We have a huge coastline. So it is like that. But we've also got other areas like Sacramento in its own little pocket. We've got the Central Valley where there's a lot of farmland. We've got the mountains with the parts of Lake Tahoe and different places like that. You've probably heard of those places, Placerville. You know, we've got foothills and we've got a lot of farmland. Sacramento's like on the outskirts of farmland. If you go to our airport, there's nothing but farmland. If you go to Stockton for Sacramento, there's farmland. So, you know, we've got all that going on. And then we've got high desert. We've got, I say low desert. We've got desert, high desert. So that's what I mean by even though I have people up and down the state, they still have to drive quite a bit to get to you. But you know what? Don't despair, because we'll get to you within a couple of days. And what happens is, in between, we have psychics on staff who can call you and talk to you about what may or may not be going on in your home or office. And a lot of the times, they can calm down the energy until we get there. So, there's our guest. So, yeah, they can do that. Anyway, I want to get right to it tonight. I do have 2 events going on this weekend. Saturday is going to be the beginning of the meditation club, where you can join this club for $25 a month, and you will get 3 to 4 meditations a week, and we will go over health and everything to help you. Teach you how to meditate. There'll be guided meditations. Check that out in the description of the show, and it's down below the description. Click on that. Sign up over at Meetup if you're interested in doing meditations. And I'm looking at starting at doing this 3 to 4 times a week and maybe expanding off that. So if that's something that interests you, please feel free to do that, okay? That's just something that I think is good for people. I mean, I'm going to handle money, financial meditations. We're going to handle health meditations. I can tell you from experience that when I was diagnosed with congestive heart failure and I started meditating, between eating right and changing my mindset through meditation, my heart got better. I ended up within about 6 months bringing my heart back up to a normal flow, even though I still have heart failure, but for like a normal heart flow, and that was through meditation. So meditation does work. So if it's something you might be interested in for stress release or whatever, come on over, sign up, the California Haunts Meetup, and we'll get going on that. The first one is going to be Saturday at 5 p.m. Pacific. All right. So just click on that link down there, and if the link's not there, I'm sure it's there. But if it's not there, just Google California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team Meetup, and then look under events. The second thing that's going on is Sunday I'm teaching a Psychic Development Class 2. And some people have gone through the first class. You don't have to really do the first class, because if you really feel you have psychic abilities, what the second class focuses on is trying to hone in to see what those abilities are. You might be good at clairaudience, you might be good at clairvoyance. And I do little exercises to see, where you might be good at. So, yeah, if you want to do that, again, look down at the description of the show, and you'll see that that information is there to sign up. And again, if you can't find that, go to the California Haunts Meetup page, and it's right there. Okay? Now, if you're watching from Facebook, and a lot of you are, please be sure to hit that follow button if you haven't done so already. Hit that share button, and do hit those like buttons. Okay? Because what that does, especially if you like what you hear, what that does is it puts us higher up in the algorithm, and Facebook then sends us out to more people to be seen. All right, and that's why we ask you to share this too. All right, if you like what you hear tonight and everything, just share this, because the more people we reach, the better it is for the show. Same thing for YouTube. If you haven't subscribed already, subscribe. Hit hit those happy faces, hit hit the hearts, hit everything, because it helps us. It helps us with the algorithm on YouTube as well. And we're trying to build up our YouTube following. Okay, we're trying to build up our following everywhere. That's what we do everywhere. So yeah, it works the same on YouTube. And on YouTube, there's over 700 videos over there from this show. I was surprised because 2021 I was in this studio, because I did a year in my other studio, the big studio. But the time goes so fast that 2021 I was already in this studio. So that was kind of fun to realize yesterday. So I've been doing this for a while. But the thing is, we need, we always need followers and subscribers. So the more the merrier. And I would think you guys would like the show enough to share it with family and friends. And maybe you're sitting there tonight eating dinner listening to me, blah, blah. And, and there I go to where Mario goes. Look at that. Blinked out, came back. Bing! But, and just share us. That's what we want to do. Like we say at the end of the show, if you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you hate the show, share it with 5 of your enemies. We're just trying to get the word out about the show. Anyway, you can find us on Facebook under California Haunts, California Haunts Radio. You can find us on Instagram under Ghosty Gal, all lowercase. You can find us on Twitter under California Haunts. You can find us on Twitch under Cal Haunts. And we're over on TikTok under California Haunts. Okay, that being said, my guest tonight, Linda Lou Long, has written a book about a serial killer, and it's kind of Ted Bundy-ish in that this gentleman, nobody suspected that he was like that. It was one of these deals where he was such a nice guy. I've read part of the book, and yeah, everybody that realized that this gentleman, boy, it gets hot here under the lights, I'll tell you. Whew. Everybody that was in contact with this gentleman during his spree of killing people has nothing but nice things to say about him. He was the sweetest guy, yada, yada, yada. But yet, he killed multiple times. And I think there's stuff that he has done that they haven't even linked to him yet. But anyway, we'll get into that. Linda Lou Long is here, and it's going to be it's going to be a over-the-air interview. No, there's no camera in this. It's going to be an over StreamYard interview, so I'm going to flash her photo up when she's talking and stuff. But it's going to be an interesting story. I have read about halfway through the book. I get so many books, so I try to get through at least half to almost full books before I do interviews, but sometimes it's hard. I got a bunch of stuff going on. So let's bring her on, and let's get on with this and learn about the Tuskegee Strangler. Here we go. Hello, Linda. Oh, let's see. Gotta turn something on here. Let me get the mic on. Let's see. Give me a second here.
How about now?
Oh, there you are.
Okay, cool.
I got you. Scared me for a second, too.
Okay, I just hit the wrong button.
That's okay. It happens. I hit a lot of wrong buttons. That's my issue.
That's what life is, isn't it? Wrong
Everybody that listens to my show knows that I'm a button pusher, so, I've even had a mic literally like I have to have the mic strapped in a certain way. And I started the show where the mic has fallen. So I've had a little mic drop.
Yeah.
Tell us about you, man.
Well, what do you want to know?
Tell me everything. No,
how I got into serial killers in the first place?
Yes. How did people get into serial killers?
Oh, wow. Great picture. Well, it was all a part of school. I was in class in a master's level criminal justice program at Sangamon State University years ago in Springfield, Illinois. And one of the classes I took was serial homicide, and that was with Dr. Steve Egger. And I thought the class was fascinating, all that good stuff. But the project at the very end of it, of course, the final paper was you would write about a serial killer. And he put a list of them up on the bulletin board, pick one. And I said, well, everybody already knows about all those people. And he said, well, so find someone no one knows about. And I said, how am I going to do that? And he said, I don't know, just find someone. So I was just, I worked for the government then. I'm retired now, but I worked for the government then. And I was handling some grants and contracts through University of Mississippi.
Right.
And so I have to talk to them on the phone at least twice a month. And I was on the phone with them one day and I said, hey, y'all wouldn't happen to have any serial killers down there, would you? And he said, well, yes, as a matter of fact. And he transferred me to their sociology department, who gave me the name of the arresting police officer in Starkville, Mississippi. And I contacted him, and he was the chief of police by that time, which was several years later, several years after the arrest and everything. And so he couldn't do anything about it. He liked the idea that I was trying, my professor was interested in it. We were trying to pursue it because no one knew about this guy. Right. So he sent me the entire case file in a big box with the confession tape and everything. And he said, there you go. You get to write it now. So I said, well, okay. And then I took it back to my professor and I sat on his desk. I said, well, here it is. And he said, there you go. There's your stuff. Start writing. And I said, well, I really don't know what to do. And he said, well, just figure out what kind of story you want to tell and tell the story. And because, see, I had already written about it and written a version for him and his format for a textbook that he has. It's printed now. It's used now in colleges. It's Serial Homicide. They're All Around Us by Dr. Steve Egger, and it's being used now. But he gave me, I think I'm chapter 13, 12 or 13. But I wrote about this particular killer within his format. He had certain things he wanted identified: family, occupation, education, things like that. So I went down the same format he had for all the other ones in his book, and I had a chapter out of it. And he was the one who told me I should go further with it. And as part of that chapter, I also went down and did a visit. This killer, Jerry Marcus, was in Parchman Penitentiary, which is down in Mississippi. So as part of my class project, I sent the formal letter to the warden and asked for permission and all this rigmarole to get into that place. So I did actually meet him and speak to him personally, face to face. And I exchanged letters with him for almost 9 years. And he detailed to me other information besides what was already in the case file, but other information about what he had done and why he had done it.
I want to apologize up front. I have your middle name misspelled in there, in that graphic. It's Lou and not Loo. God knows what I was thinking.
I just noticed it. That's okay.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, just to let everybody out there know it's Lou. I'm an idiot. It's all good.
Well, it's hard for most people to understand, but it's a Southern sort of thing. We call each other by two names down here.
Right.
Like I'm Lou, like Fannie Mae, Annabelle, that sort of thing.
So I do apologize for that.
That's okay.
I'm interested in you going through those records because as a newspaper reporter covering crimes in courts, right, people don't realize what those court transcripts look like.
Oh, they are so, and they're numbered line by line.
Yes.
I mean, and because you can't make one mistake in those, and people don't seem to get a grip on that. But you can't make one mistake on that, or you'll blow the whole thing. So it can be real involved. I've learned a lot by writing about it. But my own book, that I wrote after the textbook version, the book that's published now, I didn't write it so much about him. I wrote it about the girls. Because, see, the thing that makes him different is that the women that he murdered were all his girlfriends he was having intimate relationships with, going out on dates, going to church, going to the grocery store. Everybody knew them. It had started in Tuskegee, Alabama, and everybody knew everybody. So, no one even, and the girls that he killed, the first two, he got caught attempting to assault two of the girls. They were waiting on their bus there on the university. They were students. And he got out of that charge, and that was reduced, and his aunt bailed him out of the county jail. He had never been in trouble before, and they just thought it was crazy because, see, he worked for the university.
Mm-hmm.
That's how he got there, and he worked as an intern in the hospital there. They had their own hospital on campus to take care of basically the community, but the student body as well. And that's where he worked. So he knew, it was a small university. So the students, each other, everybody knows everybody. But no one ever dreamed that, well, the first two he got caught, well, that was brushed under the rug, and the university didn't want to talk about it. But then the second two, it was never revealed that he did it. I mean, one of the bodies was never recovered. She was never
Mm-hmm.
found, and the other body was recovered and found. And the only way I was able to get this information, because the university, my daughter and I went down there to go to the personnel office to talk to him about him and hiring him and da 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 da. And they did not want to talk to us, and we were escorted off campus.
Wow.
They didn't want to discuss it. They acted like they didn't know nothing, and they didn't want to talk about it. I could talk to their legal counsel, and that wasn't what I wanted. So the funny thing was that, Tuskegee University is a very prominent black university, majority black. I think they've got a few whites, I'm not sure, but it's a very prominent university, and they have, say, a hotel on campus within the school for families to stay at. When they're there for graduation or ceremonies or whatever, they can rent their room there rather than go to one of the hotels. So we had already rented a room to stay in at the campus. So we snuck back on after dark when the guards had changed at the guard shack, and we snuck back in and just went to our room. But once we were in and we got the room, we were trying to figure out how we could get the information I wanted. And I said, well, I bet you it's in the library somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so we decided to check the student newspapers. And I went to the approximate dates of when it had happened, and I found articles in the student newspaper about these two students. And that was the only material found, only thing. No police reports, no nothing,
Right.
nothing.
So
So
essentially, they were just trying to cover it up, not cover it up, but not not publicize it because they didn't want their university's name soiled.
maybe that was it. That's
Mm-hmm.
probably a good part of it. I'm not sure, but they sure did shut it up real quick. And there was nothing. There was a little something in some of the local newspapers, and I think there was something in a brief little something that's in the Tuskegee News. But I mean, I had reporters from two different newspapers that were trying to help me find stuff, and
Sure.
there just was nothing. There basically was nothing. And he did those two girls, and then right after that, right after he killed the second one, and he killed her after they had played tennis, no less.
Mm-hmm.
And so once after it was only a matter of weeks before he started getting nervous and started feeling like people were watching him, and that they had found the body, and he was with the group that found her. I mean, he was there all the time. So no one ever dreamed it was him or he had anything to do with it. So another friend of his who had graduated already from Tuskegee was working at the university, the school in Tennessee, and offered him a student slot, as an athlete, to be on their ball teams, because he was also a star athlete. So he went to the university in the school in Tennessee, and he spent about 6 years there. He had two different relationships with two different students. He had children with two different ones. He worked for the university, all different kinds of things. And then he finally, he was there for like 6 years, working and off work and going to school and all this stuff. He finally popped his cork. He had gotten laid off from the university. Okay, he had gotten in trouble. He got mixed up with letting someone have keys to an office, and they got in and damaged equipment, et cetera, et cetera. So he lost his job at the school, and he decided he didn't want to go back to class anymore. He was tired of that too. He had hurt himself, and athletically, I think he had done something to a knee or something, and he wanted to go home. So he started planning on how he was going to hitch home. But in the meantime, he was without a job and without student housing, and he was sleeping in the bunkers down on the ball field. Well, he went to the public aid, the government office there, and he got food stamps. Well, he met the woman who worked for the public aid office who got him the food stamps, and he invited her out on a date. And they must have dated for about 3 weeks before he murdered her. And he was out of his pattern with this girl. Usually he sees a strangler, and hence the name.
Right.
But he liked to hand strangle. But this girl, instead, he was different. They were at her apartment, and another tennis game they've been playing, and she came out of the shower, and he took a cable cord off the TV or stereo, whichever, and strangled her with that. And she didn't know why or what, and she's sitting there trying to get him to explain why while he's strangling her. And so she collapses on the floor, but he wants to make sure that she's dead. So he took her back into the bathroom and filled up the bathtub with water and held her under water until the bubbles quit coming up. And then after he did that, he dried her all off. He redressed her in her pajamas. He positioned her in bed with a picture of her and her husband laying on the bed beside her, and a little note that he scribbled on a piece of paper saying, "I hate you, Arthur," which was her husband's name. And he left her. Well, when the authorities found her body, I think it was about 4 days later, and when they found her body, he had cleaned up the apartment so well. It was just like no one even lived there. And I've got an interview in the book with one of the police officers who was on the scene. He said, if anyone had even told us that was a possibility, that she had been drowned, we would have checked her and found the water in her lungs and knew something else had gone on. He said the way she was positioned in the bed, it just all fit. There was a bottle of antihistamine on the nightstand that he had opened and knocked over, like she had taken too many of them or whatever. And that's how they termed it, as accidental death. But after he confessed, then they reopened that case and put it down as a homicide.
Well, he was highly intelligent then.
Pardon?
He was really intelligent then, huh?
Oh, yeah, he's a smart guy. He's still intelligent.
Yeah.
He's still there, from what I'm told. He was in Parchment at first. Parchment's where they send all the bad guys and girls, or guys.
Right.
And then he convinced them of his sincerity. Let's say that. And so they moved him to one of their farm prisons down further on the Delta. Actually, it's right by the state line to Alabama. And so he's down there on the farm, now where they grow all the stuff for everybody and all that good stuff. And the restrictions are less, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, because he's convincing them to trust him. So, but he's there until it's over, because he has a life sentence to serve in Mississippi. But if for some reason he outlives that life sentence, then he'll go to the next location where he killed, is in Tennessee, and he'll start serving a life sentence for the kill there. And that doesn't count all the ones that he killed back in Tuskegee, because when he came home and took that bounce in Tuskegee before he went to Mississippi, he killed 3 more girls, one of whom was a girl he grew up with, her and her family, and they owned a local restaurant. there in town, and he grew up with all of them. And he murdered her and buried her in his backyard.
Wow.
And she was, by the time they recovered her body, it was just bones.
Right. Now my
And they
question
were
is
able to
this is, you
identify her.
talk with him and stuff. Was there ever a clear-cut motivation that he had for doing this? Because they always, go back in their life. Did he have a horrible childhood, or what kind of put him on this track?
I think he was abused as a child. He relates a lot of negative activity with his father.
Okay.
And his father abused his mother as well. His mother and his aunt, I met them both when this research was early on. And nice ladies, real nice. I went down, visited them more than one time, and interviewed them more than one time. They had no idea at all that their special boy was what he was.
Now
But
you write in your book how nice this man was, how nice he was. He was well liked.
yeah, he had always been, and he, like I said, his mom lived in one house and his aunt lived next door. And he would go over, and when his aunt had a heart attack or a heart issue, while she worked at Tuskegee too. And she worked in Central Supply, I believe. And she's the one that got him that job. So she had a heart issue and she had to quit. So that's part of why he came home and went back to work there, so that he could take care of her. And, when he came back that second time, he worked on campus again. Except they didn't hire him this time. He got hired by a construction crew that was building on campus. But he still managed to get back on campus, and that's how he got back at those other girls. Because they were students. So he was able to get to them when he had authorization to be on campus grounds, which he did, and he killed them.
It's interesting because, as you're talking about this and him being on campus, I think of Ted Bundy too, because Ted Bundy was always going to college during his sprees. And I just wonder if it's a thing. Like you say, it's a thing because once they have permission to be on campus, it's easy access to these girls.
Right, exactly. Well, this is all of these murders were, he killed black on black.
Okay.
And there wasn't any sort of white things to do with this at all, because it's mostly a black community down there. So that didn't, racism, none of that stuff even played a part here. That wasn't even part of the whole scenario. It was just that he had been so nice. He lived with his aunt, took care of her, helped people cross the street, helped them put the groceries in the car, always going to church, talking to the mail person when they came. I witnessed it. How's Jerry? The mail person came and delivered mails. And how's Jerry doing these days? Haven't seen him, da 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 da. And she just, his aunt just said, "Oh, he's just away. He's just away." Say, well,
right. So when you got the okay, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. It's my fault. When you got the chance to talk with him, what was he like to talk to?
Well, Parchment Penitentiary, it contains some pretty rough criminals, people you wouldn't even know of by name, but they're bad. And the funny thing was, it's down on the Delta too, okay? And it's like, once you're inside these 14-foot fences, and you have to park outside, a modified bus pick everybody up. They get on the school bus and drive from building to building. They're like these modulars, these little modular buildings, and everybody lines up and comes off the bus, goes into the building, goes through the security, comes back out the door, back on the bus, back to the next stop. And you go through about 4 of those for all these security checks. And then you finally get to the building, and the only real building, brick and mortar building there was out there, a big concrete block thing. And maybe you remember, and maybe, I'm not sure what it's like out in California, but back in the day, we used to have the gymnasium, okay, and had the wooden fold-out seats that would pull out and you push them back, and they'd have the basketball hoops and stuff, and the gym doors would have that metal and the glass. Remember that woven metal that would be in the glass, so the glass wouldn't
Yep.
break when the balls hit it. So
Yep.
this is exactly what that place was like. And at the very end, when we got into that main building, we came up to the next table. Three female security guards are sitting there. You go through the showing of IDs and everything because you weren't allowed to carry anything. So I'm not really sure why they had it by going through all these screenings for security. But anyway, then they open the door and you go out into the gymnasium, and there were tables and chairs, and everybody was having a big picnic. All these individuals, which I didn't know you could do it, had brought sacks of food into the prison, and they were all sitting around the tables, kids running and playing all over the place. I'm sure if they'd had pets, they'd been everywhere too. And they just turned everyone loose together.
Wow. Right.
And he didn't come out right away. And, I went back up and I said, well, I'm not sure where he's at, but he hasn't come out yet. And they said, we'll go back and check. And he's a narcissist, real narcissistic. So I guess he was making sure he was all dressed proper. But, he came out and it almost looked like his prison uniform was pressed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was almost like he had taken an iron to it and pressed it. His fingernails were all perfectly filed, and his hands, everything. Just his hands. Hands always interest me with people. And I wanted to see his hands. I said, let me see your hands. And he shows me his hands, both sides. And his manicure, he had done his nails clearly himself, but it was just so neat and so clean and everything. And, I sat beside him and I kind of made a noise and I scratched my head and I turned away, and he said, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I said, well, I expected like blood dripping from your fingers or something. I said, you're just too nice a guy. And he said, yeah, I'm that way. And he laughed, So he's just a nice guy. I can't explain any other way. You wouldn't have any idea, any perception, anything that he would be what he is. And he, he's told me, in the letters before, he said, I'd like to get out and stuff, but I would probably kill again.
Yeah.
And
at least he realized it. A lot of those guys, yeah.
Hey, he just says he will.
For people that haven't gone to visit anybody in prison or in jail, high security jail, it's unnerving. It's an unnerving experience. Even at the Yolo County Jail, when I used to have to interview inmates there, I used to watch that show Oz. Remember Oz on the HBO?
Right.
I used to watch that show Oz. So calling in to interview was crazy because I thought, oh my God, there's the red line. You had to follow the red line down the hall. Right. And they do. They check you for everything. You can't take digital recorders in with you. You can't do anything. And the other thing, as I was going down the hall, the gym's off to my right, and the interview room is up higher on my left. But they're all standing there at the window, watching me walk down the hallway. And the minute you hear, it doesn't hit you until you hear that big door shut behind you.
Oh wow, yeah, it was scary because that's the way it was, and all of a sudden they're with them, everybody.
Yeah. Yep.
It was just like a madhouse, and it wasn't really. I mean, everybody was just having happy family stuff, but in Illinois, it ain't that way. If you're gonna go visit someone, you're in a small, restricted setting with less than 10 chairs and guards. This wasn't like that at all. This was like a Sunday picnic.
That's unnerving. He was open with you about, like when he told you, he said, I'd like to get out, but if I get out, I'm sure I'll kill again. Was he open about what he had done? Was he at peace with what he'd done, or how was he? When you asked him directly about it,
he never had any explanation for it. Because I asked him. I always asked. I said, "Well, why did you start this in the first place?" But see, he had a history. He had a little bit of history of animal abuse. And, he was caught doing things to animals and stuff. And so he had a history. He was implicated in some fire setting. His own house caught fire and burned. Of course, they stopped the fire, but still, there was a fire. And then, oddly enough, while he was there, he was in Tuskegee at the time. By accident, I was on the square. You know, Tuskegee is one of these smaller towns. They have the county square with the county building and all that stuff. And I was out there, and I ran into some fellow who was out there with his car, and he was rubbing the hood. And I said, "Pretty nice car you got there." And I found out it was the assistant DA. And he invited me up to my office, up to his office, and we talked about it. And apparently, one of his nieces was one of the victims. Okay. And so he was all full of all different kinds of information. But he told me that when I found evidence of it after the fact, that the original courthouse that had all the paper copies, see, when Marcus was in all that trouble, there were no computers. You know, everything was in paper still. Paper files, typing, that sort of thing. And the courthouse, it wasn't really the courthouse per se, it was the records section. Caught fire and burned. And all of those records were lost. And he was there at the time, but no one actually was able to say he did it, because at that time they didn't know who he was. They didn't know this. But it caught fire and burned, and he had thought, I guess, he had implied that he had thought all the records would be lost. But then the assistant DA told me, no, we had copies in another location. And he led me to another file that I went over to the courthouse and got copied out, you know, that gave me more information on it. I thought that was kind of accidental that I ran into this fellow, and I was going to come back and interview him a second time to find out more about his niece. But he had a heart attack at a 4th of July celebration, so I never got to make contact again with him. These people are all passing away. You know, mother's gone now, the aunt's gone now, and I've never really had any contact with the family, because this isn't about the family per se. You know, he has a brother and sister and such, but this isn't about them. This is about him. So their names don't appear in it anywhere. You know, their names are not in anywhere, nothing. Now, the aunt and the mother, yes. And their name is mentioned, but there's no information about them, no nothing, because this wasn't about them. This was about him and about his victims. You know, a lot of things people get off on the family and this and that and the other, but no, I didn't want to bring that into it. I wanted it to be about him and the girls, not about anyone else.
Do you think that they know exactly how many he killed, or did you think there's still people out there that he killed that they can't find?
Oh, yes. There's others. He told me that there were others, but he never talked to me any further about it. He said, and there were times when he was married to his high school sweetheart. The doctor she worked for at the VA moved his practice down to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and he helped them load and unload U-Haul equipment and take that down there. Okay, so he was in and out of Baton Rouge more than one time, and that's an easy place for people to disappear. You know, down there. It's easy for people to disappear. And so, you know, he could have killed people that they wouldn't have even known were gone.
Right.
You know, he never told me any more about it. And I wanted to have another interview, you know, with him and talk to him some more. And I may yet try to revisit him again, because I was the only person that ever visited him. And I don't think he's had a visitor since. I'm not really sure about that, but you know, I'd like to talk to him again about it. But I had a little thing. One of the DA office's people in Tennessee wanted to hook him to some cold cases that they had that they weren't able to solve. And she contacted me, and I said, yeah, sounds like a good idea. Let me give him a call and we'll set up an interview, hopefully. And she said, okay. Well, she didn't wait. she went ahead and contacted the warden and tried to get permission to see him and talk to him, and he completely shut down. He would not talk to her, and he hasn't talked to me either since. And I said, it wasn't my fault. I didn't have anything to do with it, but that was enough for him. He didn't want to talk anymore. So I'm gonna try to go back. The officer arrested him, David Lindley. He's retired now, and I think David Lindley, myself, and the other police officer from Tuskegee were all three going to go and try to visit him. But pulling us all together in 2 different states and 3 different states and getting it all done is another story. But that's part of the plan.
You see, movies about these serial killers, and did you go in with and I did this too because I didn't know what to expect. When you meet with these people, did you have a preconceived thing in your mind when you went in, and then you were totally shocked, like you say, because he came out looking so clean and everything?
Right. It's just this case is so strange. Because that's why I picked it up and went with it in the first place. I mean, you could always write something about one of the other killers everybody knows about, but this case was so strange and so different. And he just, he just never has, he's not one would say bloodthirsty or vicious or cutting people up or any of that stuff. No, he's just real insidious, the way he sneaks in. And he gets right next to him. Such a nice guy. Help him with the homework, all that stuff. And then, you're dead.
When you talk to the people, like you talked about his neighborhood and stuff, I mean, they had to have been shocked because, they thought he was a nice guy.
Oh, yeah. Well, his mom and his aunt had no idea whatsoever. And some of the information I gave to them, they had never known. It had never been revealed to them. See, they didn't even know. It was so successfully shut down, they didn't even know themselves. So got a lot of pleasure out of it. I mean, not pleasure, but a lot of satisfaction out of letting them know, because they never knew. I mean, they knew some of these girls. His mom got him introduced to one of the victims. She knew her from church. And he met her in church. It didn't matter. He killed her anyway.
Right. Well, my question on this too, because he did this and he was living in this neighborhood. Did the neighbors notice, like, him bringing people back home with them, or that he would take the like long absences to do this stuff, or was it just like he'd go out, do it, and then come back for the night?
Well, that's what was curious. One of the neighbors, now, again, she's already passed away. I wasn't able to interview this, but one of the neighbors told authorities at the time that she thought she saw him struggling with the girl on the steps of the house. See, these houses are concrete block, and they have the stairways on the outside. A lot of times the stairway to the second floor will be on the outside of the house and on the out in the open. So, he pushed her down the stairs. And one of the neighbors indicated that she thought she had heard the struggle and seen that girl fall down the stairs. But the police never interviewed her about it, and I was never able to contact her back about it, because she was already gone. It was too late. It had just laid for so long, and she was gone. I couldn't interview her. So that's a problem with a lot of this. It's almost been impossible to find people to interview that remember it or had something to do with it. Now, when the book was written, that was another story. That was several years ago when I was able to get all those interviews in. But today, I don't know who will be left. David's left, the arresting officer, and Al Kindle, who is the officer in Tuskegee, the investigator, who knew Marcus for years, and he knew he was guilty, but he just couldn't catch him. And that was so irritating for him because he couldn't catch him. And then he made that mistake there in Mississippi, and, he got caught.
Right. How many murders are known that he did?
7.
7? Okay.
That was over 16 and a half years. time.
Wow.
That time went by during which he murdered these women.
Wow. Now, the first one you talked
I
about.
call them girls too because they were
Right.
so young,
Right.
but yet they're women, but yet they were girls.
Right.
They were
Right.
so young.
So you call you call him a narcissist. Do you think because it kind of like I said, it parallels kind of like what Bundy did, because Bundy would wash their hair, and stuff like that. And
Right.
do you think he might have been a bit of a sociopath?
Well, I'm not sure where he did change. He changed his MO completely with the victim in Tennessee. The redressing and the cleaning up of the room and the
Right.
using the cord instead of his hands and the drowning. He had never done anything that I don't want to say that intense, let's say. Before he had been a simple strangler. I mean, that's not simple, but yet he strangled.
Right.
And that was how he murdered the girls. And sexual assault usually didn't occur because they were already into it, having intimate relationships a lot of times when this occurred. So, it wasn't like that, but it's just so strange. It's still, it's still such a strange thing. It's still there's none other like it. It's just because he's, they don't have to be gory to be dangerous.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? Some of the
Right.
most dangerous ones, they're around us every day. They're next to us at the grocery store, at the gas station. They're all around us. People that could just step right over the line and kill you.
Absolutely.
It's
Was it
easy.
was it hard to get him to talk to you, or was he open right away with you?
Well, I started out with the letters as Jane Doe.
Sure.
And that was part of class, and I had to tell the class, what stage I'm at. I've sent this letter, I've sent that letter, sent for permission, da 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 da. And it was part of a learning process for the whole class how to go about someone in prison or whatever. But it was just uh it was just a different sort of thing, because it wasn't like it was like it shouldn't be. I'm not sure how to explain it. I'm still perplexed over it even today. That he's such a nothing like you'd ever dream would do. Nothing. Not even a narrowing of the eyes or anything. They say you can
Right.
see it in your eyes and stuff. Nope. Not this guy. Nope. Squeaky clean.
This is interesting to me because, like I told you, in the initial interview that I did with you on the phone, when I interviewed this gentleman that had committed murder, he was so sincere.
Right.
Well, I didn't do this, but so and so, this was a setup. But I mean, they're so sincere when they're talking to you.
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, he went, when he finally got caught and ended up, it was several hours of interview before he finally confessed. But then he said, and I'll tell you about the other girls too, because they had no idea. They thought it was just that one girl, Dot Davis. But that wasn't. He said, oh, I'll tell you about the other girls too. And these cops are just like, oh no, what? And then he confessed about all the other girls. And so that was kind of a shock to them too. And then they all went out and started, the people in Tennessee opened up the case and reopened it and re-evaluated her and made it not a medical thing, but made it homicide. And, they all went back to their offices and did various things along that line. But I hope I can persuade him to talk to me some more and give me more information. I don't know.
Did he ever tell you why he did it?
Well, I asked him over and over, and he just said he didn't realize that was really what he was doing. And I said, well, you were strangling them. He said, but they seemed to like it. We were intimate. We were making love. And I said, but they're dead. And he said, I know. It was just like he didn't realize himself what he was doing, but yet he kept going back and doing it again.
Right.
And he admitted, he said, I can't stop it. I can't control it. See, when he went away to Tennessee, he thought it was over. You know, those first two girls were going to be the last two. And then he lost it and he strangled that other girl, the public aid worker, and, you know, killed her. And then that was his downfall. Then he went back home and he killed three more. And then he, let's see, one, two, three, one, two, three, and four, five, six, seven. Yeah, he killed three more and then went to Mississippi and killed the last.
Hmm.
Because the last three he killed in Tuskegee, they were within weeks of each other. And that's when Al Kendall, who, you know, was the investigator there, just started getting real hot on Marcus's trail and kept calling him in for interviews and talking to him and trying to corner him, you know, because he had one of the girls, he had implied, you know, Marcus had told him it was a certain other fellow who was his girlfriend, you know, his boyfriend, her boyfriend. And he tried to imply this guy, but this guy had he was working with his brother-in-law in a garage, and he had a strong alibi, so that didn't work. And that started, when the alibi started caving in, that's when Marcus knew that he was caught.
Well, talking about that subject, how did they catch him exactly? I mean, because he was like you say, they were looking at different alibis, and somehow somewhere along the line, he was the suspect. But as far as his arrest goes and all that, did Marcus know it was coming, or did they show up one day at his house, or how'd that work?
No, see, he actually went to the police himself after he had murdered Dot Davis and strangled her and dumped her body. He was driving out in the country, down in that area of Mississippi. It's pretty isolated. There's not street lights and stuff, and it's pretty isolated out there. And he was driving along county to county trying to figure out what to do. And that's how he went through 3 different counties before he dumped her body. And the authorities figured that he did that on purpose to try to confuse things, but I think he did it on purpose because he was basically confused. He himself I don't think it was deliberate on his part, to try to outthink the police by going through 3 different counties. I don't think that was it at all. I just think he was really freaked out and was just driving around aimlessly, not sure where to go. But then he went back and he was parked in a parking lot. He fell asleep at a gas station with the car running in a parking lot, thinking the carbon monoxide fumes would kill him, and he would die there for what he had done, and he'd be dead. But no, he woke up the next day and the car had stopped running. They'd run out of gas, and he woke up the next day and went to the guy in the gas station. He told the guy in the gas station she'd been robbed the night before as part of a ploy to try to, I'm not sure what he was trying to do, but just as part of a ploy that he had, that's why he was there, and he had been assaulted and all this good stuff. And so he tried to talk out this was in Columbus, Mississippi, and he tried to talk the police out of that. That was what happened. He was assaulted and da-da-da-da-da. And, he tried to go to the police and get them to help him. He had been assaulted. It was him. That some guys had assaulted him. So that's how he got caught. And the guys, there wasn't a lot of things that Dr. Steve Egger talks about is linkage blindness. And that's something he designated himself. And that is that, like state police, county police, city police, sheriff, all that, they don't have a line of communique. You know what I'm saying? You've seen it.
Right.
They don't share information. They may find out something and call them and tell them something, but they don't openly share information because everybody seems to want to get it first. To get the catch first, to get the arrest first or whatever, and they won't share information. Well, that's what was going on down here. And no one really knew. The ones in Columbus didn't know that he was already suspected in Starkville and that they were trying to, pull him in on all that. So that's how they finally caught him. Was that he had tried to go to the police himself, indicating that he had been assaulted. And see, that never works. But he figured if he went to them, they'd know he was innocent. Yeah.
Well, when you kind of talked about him hurting animals when he was younger. How old was he when he did his first kill? That's not an animal, just a
When
human.
when he when you mean when he what now? Repeat that.
How old was he when he killed his first victim?
Well, he did this stuff with the animals and all this when he was between 8 and 9 and 10, 12 years of age. And then when he got a little bit older, high school started interesting him. Junior high and high school started interesting him in sports and stuff, and he really got away from the um, animal exploration, let's say, and all of that. But he had his aunt had found a doctor's bag. You remember? Well, back in the day, doctors, would do their house calls, and they'd have that
Right.
black leather bag.
Right.
She found a doctor's bag back in a small shed that was on the property where he used to do some of his things with animals. And she was out there and she found it. And she didn't know where it had come from. And she left it alone, but she mentioned it to him and it disappeared after that. But he had stolen that, I suspect, from the hospital. And that's the equipment he was using to operate on his animals or whatever he was doing with them. But he had some curious things going on with his childhood. But then again, he was building it up. He was building it up even then, being nice and realizing that he could fool people if he was just a nice guy.
Now, was his family aware that he was killing animals and stuff, or not?
Not really.
Okay.
Not really. It wasn't like he did it in front of them.
Right.
It wasn't like that at all. I don't think he had a room in his aunt's house and he kept the curtains covered and everything, kept the room blacked out. And she went in there once to try to clean up and he was just enraged and she never wanted to get him up. She told me he frightened her and she never wanted to get him upset like that again. So she never went back in the room. But so no one really saw what he did or where he hid his stuff or anything because he was so private about it. And, he'd have these anger flares, and lose his temper and he frightened people when he did that. It didn't happen very often. It never happened on the job. And it's another curious thing about Marcus. And I was interested in maybe doing some research along this line, but he had to have a job. He had to be employed. He had to work.
Right.
His dad punished him and spanked him, beat his butt or whatever over stealing some change.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, he said that he never went back. He was always working. He was working through all of it.
Mm-hmm.
All the time he was murdering ladies.
So what makes this so interesting too is that he admits to what he did, and he admits to saying, "Hey, you know what? Well, like you say, if I get out, I'll probably kill again." But I mean, he was well aware. It wasn't one of these cases where he would kill somebody and it was like a blackout or something, to where he would forget because he knew exactly what he was doing.
Right. They just put it aside.
Yeah.
It's just like put it aside, it'll go away, and that's what he did. I think time when he went to Tennessee, he thought that if he changed his life, he left his wife in Mississippi in Tuskegee because he was married there, and he left her there to go back to school, and they never got back together after that. I mean, never, were husband and wife again after that.
Of course.
And when he left, that was when he had those 2 different relationships with 2 different women on the campus there in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
So
go ahead.
It was.
Is there any particular place that he liked doing this more than others, or did he just like, to travel around and do this so that he would confuse the cops?
I don't think it was so much that he always had a car, and a good majority of the time at Tuskegee, he used his aunt's car. So he always had transportation. And that's how he got the two in his car, the second time they're on campus, because it was hot.
Mm-hmm.
And he had air conditioning. And he offered them a ride home.
Oh, okay.
And that's how that happened. Both times.
Mm-hmm.
And he was successful with both of those girls. Well, like I said, the first girl, and we couldn't even find any information on her going through records with the newspaper or anything. The first girl,
Mm-hmm.
he claimed he had put her body in a vacant building or a vacant house, and he would go back and check her as they do.
Mm-hmm.
And that he went back once, and it was under construction, and the building was gone, and everything was like graded over. So he said he didn't know whatever happened to her, and that was why he drowned the girl in Tennessee, the woman in Tennessee, because he was afraid somehow that girl was going to come back someday and accuse him, and he was going to get caught.
Right.
And that wasn't what happened at all, but that was one of the things he was afraid of.
I just find it interesting, like you said, he was well aware of what he was doing, and it was premeditated, and he just went on and on and on with this stuff. I guess I think it's a thing like police officers, for instance. Once they go on to one murder scene or they go on to the next one, it's not that they get like numb to it, but it's a thing where it just becomes like an everyday thing. Because I remember even having a news beat. The first few bodies that I had to look at, I was just grossed out. I didn't like it. But then as time went on, I just kind of refocused on it as being a job. Okay, they're there. The bodies they're no longer there. So I
Well,
wonder if that's how he was looking at it.
it's just desensitizing yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's like just step aside. Whatever happened, but it wasn't really him. He wasn't
Right,
really responsible. He had
right.
just lost it briefly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He would get his ship in, or I mean, himself back together.
How old is he now?
I believe he is 74 years old, 74 or 76.
Hmm.
I'd have
And
to.
how long did he kill? What was the time span? You know,
Pardon?
the time span of the killings of his victims.
He killed up until 1986, I believe.
Okay.
That was on.
Okay.
And he killed for, like I said, 16 and a half years.
Wow, that's a
Before,
long time.
yeah,
Wow.
but why would they ever suspect him? Such a nice.
Right.
I mean, he was
Very
always
interesting.
right there,
Mm-hmm.
always there, but that's the way they are. The people, think it's, oh, he was there. He couldn't have done anything wrong. Well, no, that's not true. Those are the ones that are watching. They're right there. They want to see. They want to see what happens. They want to see how they're going to be implicated if they are. They're usually
Right.
right there, not very far away at all.
Right. Right. Right.
Bodies are recovered or such.
Absolutely. This hour blew by. I want to thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's fascinating. I appreciate you asking me. I love to talk.
I would love to get you back on again to talk more about this. This is good stuff.
Well,
What's
I have
next?
that
Go ahead.
award on Saturday with the Killer Nashville International Writers Conference, and I'm up. I've been nominated for the Silver Flashon Award, and I got. Let's see, I'm one of 8 out of almost 5,000 entries, so I think that's pretty good.
Wow, that's really cool. That is
Yeah, well,
really
we'll
cool.
see if I win or not.
Yeah. So beyond that, what are you going to try? Like you said, you were talking about writing another book or adding to this one.
Well, this one will probably go into something else. I've been working on a screenplay with some people, and we're talking about. I mean, this is the first book exclusively about a black serial killer,
Uh-huh.
Nothing else but a black serial killer and his victims. So we're probably gonna make a film out of it. I know that there's some small scale films going on about serial killers and all that stuff, but this we hope will be a little different since it's based on fact and all that.
Right,
It is
right, right,
a thing created. It's going to be based on fact.
right.
So we'll
Well,
see. We'll see.
mhm.
But I got another one coming out. I'm working on with my publisher and another author that he has a version of John Wayne Gacy.
Oh,
I mentioned
cool.
it in the book because John Wayne Gacy was first, before he did any of those other things, he worked in Springfield, Illinois when he was 22 and 23 and 24 years old. Actually, half of 24 before he left. But I think he killed there first. And I've got interviews and stuff going on. And there was a body they recovered from the old building he used to work in that was abandoned. And the body had been stuffed down the chimney from the roof, which only could have been done from inside the store and a certain door to reach the roof. It wasn't public access. So, I got the autopsy on that, and we're working on that too. So,
Well, I'll have to get you back on with that one. A couple of years ago, I interviewed his attorney, his
oh yeah,
defense attorney. Oh, yeah.
before. Yeah, I met him before, and I've told him these things, but they had the kills in Chicago. That's all
Mm-hmm.
they needed. They
Mm-hmm.
had the bodies, they had the kills. They didn't need any more anything. But I think that he was young, and I think he started in Illinois, in Springfield, in the capital. I'm almost confident he did. I've got information, and there's a little bit in the book about that too.
Okay,
Not
cool.
much, but a little bit, just a tease.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you again, and we'll be in touch. I'd love to have you come back on and talk about stuff. This is fascinating
Okay,
to me.
well, sounds like fun.
All right. Well, you had a great. Oh, how can people find you?
It's Google. All you have to do
Okay.
is Google Tuskegee Strangler, and it comes up in all languages.
Sounds good. All right, Linda, you have a great rest of your evening.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. That was fascinating. It takes me back to my roots, back to my pounding that newsbeat to as a crime reporter. Fascinating stuff, fascinating stuff. And the book, like I said, I read a good chunk of it. It's a great book. So if you guys want to read it, a great story, this is the one for you. Tomorrow, we're shifting gears. We're shifting things around a little bit. Nancy Matz is going to be on tomorrow because our guest for Friday, uh, the astrology house, the astrology house psychic, requested that she be on Friday. So Nancy Matz is going to be with us tomorrow, and we're going to be talking about how to. Let me read this. I came up with the topic. It's figuring out your own intuitive self and how to deal with that. So Nancy's going to be talking about that, so you get to learn how to figure that out. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. Again, if you're watching from Facebook and you haven't done so already, and you like what you heard, please be sure to hit that follow button and leave me some thumbs up and some happy faces, or like Jerry did, a nice little shock face. That works too. Any kind of face like that, just smile. Show me some love. Same thing over YouTube. Show me some love and sign up and subscribe because we have a lot of stuff going on during the week. We're on Sunday through Friday and sometimes on Saturdays. But there's a lot going on, with the show, different types of guests. In fact, next week we are going to be doing an all-inclusive week on UFOs and UAPs and alien abductions and all that stuff. So that's going to be the whole week next week, Monday to Friday. So you don't want to miss that. So put that on your calendars and stuff. But anyway, I want to thank you all, and I really appreciate it. If you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you hate the show, share it with 5 of your enemies. We're equal opportunity here, and we're always looking for people to follow us and subscribe and all that stuff. The more word of mouth that gets spread, the more people see the show. I mean, look how much we've grown over the last year. This year has been a huge leap, and growth-wise. So I'm real excited. So anyway, thanks everybody. I'll show you you can look at her book one more time, and then I'm going to sign off here. So here we go. That is the Tuskegee Strangler, the nicest serial killer they ever met. And that's by Linda Lou Long. You can get that at Amazon. And it's an excellent book. It's written nicely. All that good stuff. All right, guys. I will see you tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Have a great evening.